Black like me. Black like me. Black like me.
You're listening to Black Like Me with Dr. Alex G., a podcast that invites you to experience the world through the perspective of one black man, one conversation, one story, or even one rant at a time. Here's Dr. G.
Hey, good people. I want to welcome you back to another exciting episode of Black Like Me with Dr. Alex G. I've got to tell you, I've been enjoying season 7 and talking about rising to the occasion and how black people have used intellect and ingenuity and creativity and self-preservation to still thrive, not just strive, but to still thrive in the face of all that we've endured. I appreciate having this place to use my voice positively and constructively. And I truly appreciate the fact that so many of you have downloaded hundreds of thousands of episodes to listen and to journey with me. So I just want to pause for a moment and to say thank you for those of you who listen, who write comments, who repurpose or repost or even share. Thank you for that, because that makes this worthwhile. And speaking of worthwhile, to those of you who have elected to become patrons through the website patreon.com, thank you. These are the folks who support this podcast at as little as $2 a month, and others will do $25 or $50. But for the hundreds of you who support and have supported this, I appreciate you, because you allow us to offer a very professional and polished medium of expression in this crazy and hectic world. And I get to do special things with you. So like this week, there's a special Zoom conversation with patrons just to thank you and to update you on some stories about what's happening in my life and to encourage you about cool things that are happening. So those of you who have not yet become a Patreon supporter, please consider doing it. There's a link right in the notes section of this. Consider doing this. You can afford it. Do it for as little or as long as you can. But just know that your support helps to maintain the integrity of my voice and the professionalism of this program. And I am indebted to the folks who help to empower this voice. I appreciate you. You know, I'm going to do something today that I don't typically do. I love having guests on. I love having people come on and talk about the wonderful things that they do. But I also created this podcast so that I could speak to people, perhaps help to change minds, offer perspective, if my perspective, or to help people change perspectives or challenge their perspectives. And I think that that's part of the show that I really enjoy. That's part of the podcast that I really love. Today, I'm responding to an email message that I got. And I don't want to do this, and I'm not doing this in order to give more space to someone who leaves an ignorant comment. That's not really what this podcast is about. But because I want to at least address the optic, the concept, the notion of what this person is saying, I thought, you know what, let me just reflect. It's not even a rant because I'm not mad about it, but I want to reflect because I think this reflection will have those of you who face similar pushback when your friends and family members and those close to you find out that you're on this journey for enlightenment and this journey for really understanding what racial harmony and reconciliation could look like. I want you just to at least hear my perspective on how I address those who don't get it, don't support it, and even call me names or address me in certain ways. And I don't mean like racial terminology, but who just challenge folks like me who are trying to bring others into the light. So I want to talk about that for just a little bit. So not only can you find Black Like Me on all of the major podcast platforms, you know, on Apple and in all these other kinds of places, you can also find it on YouTube. I have a YouTube channel where for folks who may not listen to podcasts can go on their computers and Google this. So let your friends know. people who may not really get podcasts and haven't downloaded the right kind of app, they can go to our YouTube page. There's also a link here so that they can hear everything. So, they can listen to it right on their computers. But there was a comment once, and actually I don't even remember what the episode was, but someone had responded to one of the episodes and they wrote 2 notes. But the first one said, "You are a professional victim." I thought, all right, that's interesting. I've been called a lot of things, not a professional victim, because that would imply that I make a living or my way feeling badly about myself and talking about all the things that people have done against me without any proof of success. Because you think if someone is trapped perpetually in victimization, they don't really accomplish very much. Well, that wouldn't be me. And so I read it and I just wrote a note back and just said, "That's Dr. Victim to you." Now that's an underhanded way of saying, and this is what black people have done. You can call me whatever you want to. Call me the N-word if you want to. But by saying you have to call me Dr. Victim was implying you can call me a name, but you can't match wits with me. You can't match words with me. You can't go toe to toe intellectually, historically, sociologically with me. So call me whatever your limited vocabulary allows you to, but understand that with my expanded vocabulary, I'm letting you know that you don't have the ability to reach up and pull a brother down. That's Dr. Victim to you. Show some respect. So let me just talk a little bit about this, folks, because I'm feeling this. So what makes a person a professional victim? What makes them a victim? All right, according to dictionary.com, victim is a noun, and it means a person harmed, injured, or killed as a result of a crime, accident, or other event or actions, like a victim of domestic violence. Now, what I'm wondering here is he admitting that something has happened to me or others? Because just the term or the definition for victim is not that you're making things up, but that this really happened. Victimization really takes place. People are really victimized because things have happened to hurt them. So I'm not exactly sure what he's saying there. Is he acknowledging that this has happened? Because I'm a history major. These are things that you can Google. Pretty soon he's not going to be able to find it because of these lies about critical race theory and changing books and changing content and saying that African people were immigrant workers. Another definition is one that is acted on and usually adversely affected by the force or an agent. The schools are victims of the social system. It also means one that is injured, destroyed, or sacrificed under various conditions of victim. Or a person can be a victim of cancer or of an auto crash or a victim of murder. These are things that really happen. Like to be a victim doesn't mean that nowhere in the definition does it imply you've made it up. These things have really happened. So am I a professional victim because I keep experiencing these things or because I talk about these things? Because he said it in a way as if this were imaginary or make believe. But one of the definitions of victim is a person who is tricked or duped. I consider myself fairly enlightened and I see things clearly because I read. And so who's tricked or duped here? But there is something that's called victim blaming. It occurs when the victim of a crime or wrongful act is held entirely or partially at fault for the harm that befell them. And so this is interesting because victim blaming just means that when, you hear this like you're blaming the victim. So it's still not taking away the fact that something has happened to this victim, but you're actually blaming the victim when they bring that perpetrator to court. Well, what does victim blaming look like? An example of victim blaming or the attitude is, well, she must have provoked him into being abusive. They both need to change. There are good people on both sides. Hey, does that sound familiar? The statement assumes that the victim is equally to blame for the abuse, when in reality, abuse is a conscious choice made by the abuser. And so it's very interesting. So is he then victim blaming by saying somehow I'm responsible for what's happened and is happening to black people. I don't know. I'm having a hard time following his logic, but I want to explain this very simply and clearly so that he can understand mine. So it's either your fault or it's just your imagination. So if I am a professional victim, by definition, we know what a victim is. Something has happened to me, has happened to black people. These are real experiences with landlords, with bankers, with teachers, with professors, with guidance counselors, with police officers. These things have happened. They took place and they were documented. But there's another force that's at work where victims or people who have experienced certain things are, and those are the folks who either blame them. Well, you shouldn't have been dressed provocatively. You asked for it. Or you're making it up and it's just your imagination. Either way, this dude seems to have the power to imply that either I'm responsible for what's happening, I am perpetuating what's happening, or it's not happening. So if rape victims stop reporting rape, does that stop rape? If those who have been robbed stop reporting, does that stop robbery? And so is the best that this person can hope for is that I and people like myself don't talk about the things that take place? Because you do know that there's a school of thought that says there would be no racism if black people stopped talking about shit. It's only there because they're dividing us. And so you go to court because someone stole your car. And you are making car theft more real and appealing because you're complaining that your car's been stolen. And even when your car is returned or you get a new car, it doesn't change the fact that your car was stolen. So you may even commiserate with someone whose car is stolen. Not saying that your car is stolen every day, but oh, I remember when my car was stolen, or don't park in these places, or don't drive these kinds of models, or use this type of security system. But so we're creating the problem when we talk about it, when we're talking about it in order to stop the problem. So people who bring these things to attention of the public are now the problem. This doesn't make sense. And so I think that this person was talking about a victim complex. That's probably what he meant had he been intelligent or articulate enough to express himself thoroughly. I think he's talking about a victim complex where all you talk about is what happens to you. What is a victim complex? It's the personality trait that leads people to believe that they are perpetually being victimized by the harmful actions of others for no fault of their own, even if evidence suggesting otherwise is presented to them. It's called the victim complex or victim mentality by psychologists. So, if you feel that people are always after you and you're paranoid and evidence is presented that no one's out for you and you still believe that, then psychologists refer to that as a victim complex or victim mentality. So Mr. Whiteman, who wrote on my YouTube page, who wrote this comment, if historically in congressional documents, in legal documents, in police records, in modern newscasts and journalistic reporting, if you've been shown the evidence that black and brown people are not making up stuff against you, but yet you continue to believe that we're coming after your stuff and that we're trying to victimize you and hurt you, don't you have a victim complex? If history, are we all making this up? Did this not happen? Can you show me that these things didn't happen? We have slave records because these companies had to report losses to insurance companies. That's the reason we know how many people were transported because of slavery, because they had to document the number of people in order to justify the money they were making off of slavery. We're not making this up. Black people didn't go to some NAACP gathering. We didn't gather in the woods. We didn't get together on Juneteenth Day and say, this is what we're going to say about black people and white people. We're going to make this up that the president said this and that, the military did this. and that this rule was ratified and blacks were given the right to vote, but the troops were removed from the South from protecting the rights of the black folks. So they stopped voting because they were being killed and threatened. Like, did we all just get together at a black picnic while we're eating potato salad and sweet potato pie and make this up? Or was this documented? Is this not a part of our record? So to use the words or the intended words of this misguided gentleman or person, I have a victim complex because I'm talking about what continues to happen. And there's evidence suggesting that what I'm talking about has happened and still continues to happen because America has never pushed a reset button or stop button to make these things go away. So when I address them, I somehow bother him. I somehow upset his apple cart. I somehow push buttons with him, and I wasn't thinking about him or talking to or about him. I was talking to my listening audience. I was talking to the people who have downloaded tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of podcast episodes, or tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands downloads of my episodes. So who's really acting like a perpetual victim here? Who's really acting like that? Doesn't victimization force one to troll sources, to find places of abuse and call it out? I didn't troll him. I don't even know if he has a Facebook page or YouTube page. He trolled and found me, and then he's calling me something that he's practicing. I don't look for injustice, but I will call it out when I see it. And I still persevere to succeed in spite of it. So even when I see injustice, guess what? I still get up and go to work. I still build cross-cultural relationships. I still strive to make the world a better place. But when he's a victim, he masks it with claims of nationalism. Oh yeah, I said it. He doesn't call it victimization. He masks it in claims of nationalism. No, I'm just saying this. I'm just doing this. I'm just believing this because I want to maintain the integrity of this great nation, of this great country, of America. So you never have to voice your own victimization and your own perpetual victimization because you get to call it nationalism. And we're coming after your sense of nationalism. Is that what it is? So if I'm a victim, and a perpetual and professional one, why would that bother you? I don't know what you do for a living, but frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn. It doesn't bother me. So why is my truth victimizing or convicting to you? And why is it hitting so close to home? You think I'm a victim? You think that I'm just complaining and that I'm not contributing? Do you want to compare contributions of what I and my family offer this community? Do you want to talk about the 13 college degrees, undergraduate and graduate degrees that my family has from the University of Wisconsin-Madison, one of the most prestigious and world-recognized learning institutions of higher ed in the world? Do you want to talk about contributions? My sister is a social worker. My mother was a social worker. They did case management. I've started 4 companies. I hire scores of people and pay their checks and make sure that they have insurance and retirement. Not companies I've taken over, companies I've created. Men and women, and black and white and Asian and Latino. I'm a published author. I'm an international. Do you want to really talk about the contributions of this victim? Let's compare education. I don't even want to use words and phrases you can't understand, so let's just go on to the next one. Let's compare intelligence. I can listen to an imposing view. I can hire someone who doesn't look like me. I can process what they're saying and build friendships with them. I have found the white relatives who are the descendants of the G plantation, where my family members were held, enslaved, raped, owned, sold, and I still am working towards reconciliation and building family ties with them. Does a victim do that?
This is Jeremy Holiday, a producer here on the Black Like Me podcast, and we have a favor to ask.
That's right, Jeremy. This is Eli Steenlich, also part of the Black Like Me production team. We're working on a new episode for the podcast, and we need your help.
The working title of the episode is Inquiring White Minds Want to Know.
Yeah, we recognize that the Black Like Me podcast has created a special space for cross-cultural understanding, and we are looking to expand that in a new direction.
Specifically, we are interested in your questions. Is there anything you've really wanted to ask as a white person, a non-black person, but just haven't? Now is your opportunity. Send Dr. G your questions. You can send them to our podcast email address, which is blacklikemepodcast@gmail.com. That's blacklikemepodcast, one word, @gmail.com. This will also be in the show notes.
We would love it if you would record yourself saying your question so we could use it on the show.
Some example questions are like, how do you feel about the term woke?
And do you talk to white guests differently than you talk to your black guests?
What do you think when you see a young black man sagging his pants super low?
What is your reaction when you see a white person singing or rapping along to something like hip-hop or really getting into it, and they're taking on an obviously black voice or dance moves?
Or what is your reaction when a really motivated white person new to the struggle comes up to you and asks you how they can help to change the world?
Or even something more serious like, what is it like to watch people become focused on a tragedy like the Buffalo shooting, and then another day they move on to something new?
Whatever the question, drop us a line and let us know at blacklikemepodcast@gmail.com.
You can write it, you can record it, just send it our way and please include your name and location so we can give you a proper credit on the podcast.
Thanks in advance for helping us create what we think will be a really interesting and informative episode.
Let's compare context. In the midst of all that's going on, I'm still relevant. People ask me my opinion. The mayor, the governor's office, the county executive, heads of state, business leaders, governmental leaders, university leaders. Who's asking you what you think? Shall we compare patriotism? With all the things that we have still named, I still am proud to be American. Now, there are things that America needs to do better in order to earn more of my pride, but I am still even proud of the ideals. I have a level of patriotism that has allowed my uncles, my grandfather, my great-great-grandfather. I have found traces of my family's patriotism going back to World War I, and we certainly know that my people fought in the Civil War. We know this for a fact. And so my family fought in America so that America might see them as equals. Why did your family join the military? Was it to support an ideal that promotes their own nationalism, that they are better than any other country and that they want to take stuff and maintain a lifestyle that America offered them? Because we fought for a lifestyle that we had not yet been afforded, but we hoped that America would do it. And that hope in America made my people view patriotism differently. If your people's experience was as long and historic in America as mine, I doubt that you would have put on the U.S. military uniforms. I doubt that your people would have taken up arms to fight and protect a land that consistently deprived it of its rights, because your people left Europe when Europe didn't show them the right kind of respect, didn't offer them the right kind of money, didn't give them the right kind of love. You fled your homeland when your homeland wasn't right. We didn't flee our homeland. We were stolen from our homeland, and then we put on uniforms and defended your homeland, even when we were in the backs of the boats, ships, and washing soldiers' uniforms and underwear and cooking their breakfast and their lunch and their dinner, because we believed in the ideals of America. You don't want to talk to this victim about patriotism because you can't even explain it. Hell, you probably can't even spell it. But I am the child of patriotism and patriotic black folks who are still hoping that America will do right by us. Do we want to compare spirituality? What drives us? Because my spirituality and my faith drives me to serve and to build bridges, not to call other people names. And if your spirituality is only deep enough for you to call other people names, then I don't know who it's modeled after. But I want you to know it is not a very useful or helpful spirituality. And it obviously has not helped you very much. And I'm hoping you're not spewing it on other people. And do we really want to talk about success? Because when I think of victims, I think about people who are not successful because their full-time job, if they are professional victims, doesn't allow them to create companies and write books and build bridges and become creators of thought. I'm recording podcasts because tens of thousands of ears tune in monthly to hear my thoughts and my insights. Yet, you steal a ride on my coattail because you obviously don't have one of your own to post your own insecurities. No one's asked you. No one subscribes to you. No one turns to you. I have patrons. I have people who have said, brother, speak the truth. And they look like you. And they look like you. And so if I'm such a victim, why do I have so many people who are supporting my voice? Why do you feel the need to respond to my successful endeavors and my platforms to state that I'm the victim? Why do you feel the need to do that? If I were the victim here, wouldn't I be trolling you and hungrily seeking ways to feed my victimization? Redneck, please. For the record, I despise self-imposed victimization. I call it out, and yes, I'll just say it, even in Black people. However, I don't use this podcast or this platform for calling out Black people, because I don't need to challenge Black people in front of white people to prove that I'm fair. I'm not in the business of helping you feed your jollies by saying things to my people to your dull hearing in order to legitimize myself. I've been leading and influencing Black people for almost 4 decades. I don't need this podcast to say things to Black people that make you think I'm fair. Black people pay my salary. Black people support me. Black people show up when I have events, when I have rallies, when I have press conferences, and I have a pulpit that I've stood in for decades calling out victimization and helping people not be victims. You ought to check me out some Sunday. The fact that I have a podcast and a YouTube channel for you to troll is proof that I'm relevant. What's your base? Your local Klan rally? I believe in personal responsibility, and speaking my mind is one of the ways in which that's done. My challenge is against crooked systems and those who design and have benefited from them. That's my challenge. I challenge those places. But let me tell you something, since it seems to be so difficult for you and those like you to believe in systems, let me just remind you, you do believe in systems because you've benefited from them. It was a system that was created to discover a nation that had been inhabited by Native Americans for eons. A system was instated to create the value and the resources and the authorization from the Crown and the Vatican to sail here for the purpose of dispossessing the rightful owners, Native Americans, for European and religious gain. A system was created to make unjust and even false treaties with honorable people who trusted that America and America's word was true and believed in American leaders. A system was created to move them off their land and to ghettoize them and colonize them and to whiten them, thereby creating depression, stagnation, and destruction to the point of near extinction. A system was created to tell you and those like you, go west, young man, and you are rewarded handsomely to do so. And a system was created and ratified to steal land and then steal people to work the stolen land in order to create unsurpassed wealth at warp speed in America. And not because you were smart, strong, or ethical. No, it was because people like you stole, raped, killed, cajoled, and then silenced true victims and then duped white victims so that no one would become the wiser of your evil gains. And a system was created to retell all of this in literature and television programming that trained our American minds to see Indians as vile, savage, menacing, and violent. In all honesty, They were just standing their ground like residents in places like Florida do, with governmental and law enforcement backing them. When you use the phrase caught red-handed, it's interesting because it was the Native Americans' red hands that were falsely shaken and robbed openly. But yet the term being caught red-handed is implying that somehow they created thievery. They were blamed for having hard feelings after being bamboozled. And the likes of you refer to them and us as victims? Does it really hurt your feelings to hear truth? Are you so ignorant of history and facts that the only response that your puny mind can offer and refute is that we're victims? Don't you read? Can't you read? There is no way for you or America to repay all that has been stolen from trusting and unsuspecting people like my family and Native Americans. And to be honest, do we even ask for that? Don't and haven't we succeeded in the face of all of that? Don't and haven't we created and procreated in the face of all of that? Don't and haven't we still contributed to society in light of all of this? Don't we pay taxes and fight in wars and still long for the American dream? If you can't handle people suggesting the impact of systemic injustice based upon legal and congressional documents and practices, then imagine how embarrassing to your race you'd be if you had to succeed and thrive in the face of all of that, like I and many people of color have had to do. If our call for justice makes you ill, thus making you want to climb Capitol buildings and shoot up supermarkets and suppress votes and demean character of other people, imagine how impotent you are and would be in climbing and succeeding and mending fences and finding allies in light of history, the way me and my people have. You're not worthy to call me victim, even if I were. You're not smart enough to call me victim, even if I were. And you're not successful enough to call me victim, even if I were. In fact, I've wasted enough of my valuable time slumming with the likes of bottom feeders like you, who can't fathom that my audacity to succeed in the face of all that I and my people have had to endure. And I still have the audacity to call out the systems that I have succeeded in, despite their traps and costs. And that makes you nervous. If you make me the victim, then you don't have to listen and learn. And guess what? Your children lose out on being truly American and healthy. You see, I'm not the victim here because my mind and heart have been freed. The truth makes me free. You're not free because you need to victimize me in order to live with your own half-assed life and unfulfilled dreams. You blame me for your milk-toasted life and your radicalized mind because it can't grasp my level of success in the midst of such historic social atrocities. Because you are unable and unfit to duplicate and maintain the level of success and sanity and faith that I and my people have. Because you, young man, are a victim of your own people's doing. You can't navigate a system that's been polluted by your people, and now your seed will have to fumble around with what you have been too small-minded and arrogant to teach them. You are 8% of the world's population, buddy. Everybody can't be lying about you. Now can they, neo-colonizer? You're the minority, buddy, not me, or those who look and feel and function like me. But you're too ignorant and ungrateful to grasp that I'm still trying to help your children and your children's children gain freedom and perspective from the likes of you. Yikes. To quote Barbara Billingsley in the movie Airplane, chump don't want no help, chump don't get no help. Nope. You don't get to call me victim. It's Dr. Victim to you, son. God bless you, and God bless these United States of America. Now listen, folks, I mean it when I said that wasn't a rant, because I'm not mad. I just want you to know that that level of ignorance does not slow me. It promotes me. Because folks who think and speak like that can't match wisdom and intellect with people who function the way that I do. And so I want you to understand that our energy goes towards building those who want to believe in a better future, who want to build bridges, who want to mend fences, and who want to create real relationships. So understand that there are people in the world who think like this, but that's not new. This is not a new reality. This was not created. This mindset was not created by Trump. It might have been freed or emboldened by it, but not created by it. It's been always there. But in the midst of all of that, we still lean in, we listen, we work, and we share. So listen, here's what I want you all to do. As listeners, as supporters, there is yet another link in the notes here about our upcoming U.S. Black History course. We call it Black History for a New Day. We have created a wonderful platform through my nonprofit organization called Nehemiah. It's the Nehemiah Center for Urban Leadership Development. We train non-Black allies to understand U.S. history from tenured faculty, from the African Department, History Department, and African American Studies Department. These are world-class academicians, researchers, thought leaders. So listen, I don't want you just to know a little bit about Blackness. I want you to understand a lot about yourselves and America. The purpose of the history class is to not teach you what's happened to Black people. It's to teach what systemic racism has done to America, and then inadvertently against other people. And I want you to see how those ideals and beliefs and laws were set, because it will help you to understand where we are and what we need to address. So I need you to click to get more information, to register for it, get people in your job to do it with you. Ask your HR department, can you take it as a department? We can actually train facilitators so that you can do this as a work group. You can do this as a faith community group. We have churches and synagogues that have done this together. We have colleges and universities and banks that have done it together. I encourage you, don't just be satisfied saying, I'm not like this guy that called Dr. G a victim. I need you to be someone who understands how we got here, because I need you to be an ally for helping to get us away from here. My challenge to you is to sign up for that class that begins in September, that runs for 9 weeks. We have a platform online. It is professionally produced and put together and platformed, and we train the facilitators, and you will have a facilitated experience. It will change your life. And also click that link to become a supporter of this program, of this podcast. Please don't just listen and not support. Do more than just show up. Step up, educate, donate, affiliate, connect yourself, be a part of the difference that we so crave in our world today. It has been and continues to be my pleasure to bring you these exciting and scintillating conversations. You know someone who needs to listen to this. You need to repost this. You need to share this with someone just to help them in this journey. Have a great day, and thank you so much for believing in and supporting Black Like Me with Dr. Alex G.
Black like me. Black like me.
Now, I've got some special shout outs to the many talented members of our ever-growing production team. Eli Steenlich, who produces the show and handles all of our social media. Don Thornton, my podcast manager, who keeps things running smoothly and arranges all of my interviews. Jeremy Holiday, who edits the podcast. Corey Saffold, who created this year's theme music, and Marcus Fleming on the vocals. And of course, Jakisha Hunt, who is responsible for our fabulous new podcast merch.
Thank you for listening to today's podcast. You can find out more about Dr. Alex G's amazing work at alexg.com. Black Like Me is sponsored by the generosity of the Human Family Unity Foundation.